Hey guys, this is Caleb with DSLR Video Shooter, and today we're talking about the cameras I use to make YouTube videos. Let me start out by saying two things. First, we're using a white background because why not? I wanted to play with it. Number two is obviously having this many cameras is really silly if you're an average YouTube shooter. You really only need one, maybe two or more if you're a huge team or you want some flexibility. The reason I have several cameras is to serve to the best of my ability my viewer base. So amongst you guys, there's a whole bunch of different types of people. So I want to make sure I'm not using really expensive cameras and only talking about those here on the channel. But there are also those with a little more in their budget. So I want to make sure I cover a nice breadth, and I don't want to become the Lumix guy, the Panasonic guy, or the Sony guy. I want to make sure I'm trying to keep up with cameras that I think work best for you guys and not to become super duper biased. So that is why I have a couple different ones. You'll notice they're in kind of different price brackets, and there's a couple different brands there as well. And then the other reason for having a couple different cameras is for speed of production. If you have just one single camera, you have to completely change settings and setups depending on what you're shooting. So you might have something on a tripod like I do right here. You shoot talking head stuff, but then you have to go shoot, B-roll of a product you're reviewing, or if you're a tech channel, something like that, which means you have to take it off of the tripod, move it around, disconnect all the audio, and to set it back up, it takes time. So I've tried to affordably and on a budget friendly way set up a couple different cameras in key areas. So I have a B-roll station, which I'm going to be doing a little differently here, which will be really exciting, and a camera dedicated to being on the sticks right there with the audio always set up. So now onto the cameras, starting on the budget end. Probably the most affordable camera that I have that you can buy right now is the Panasonic G7. This camera is absolutely incredible when you consider what you're getting for the money. You can pick one of these up for usually under $700. I actually got this one for $500 when B&H was having a sale, and it came with a $50 gift card. So there's definitely sales. You can get these very affordably. 4K, really nice little flip out screen. Fantastic little camera. That's one of the reasons I picked it up is the price, but also it's kind of a budget version of a GH4. So if you have cameras that are Panasonic GH4, hopefully GH5 someday, G85, this is going to blend really nice into that workflow. Same lenses, but at a fraction of the cost. So this is my current B-roll camera, because usually B-roll I don't need audio, so I don't have to worry about not having a headphone jack, those type of things. So that is the Panasonic G7. The next camera is the Panasonic G85. I am so in love with this camera. I think going into 2017, this is the best all-arounder. So I will have a review on this camera soon. I already have a guide out on it if you really want to completely master video on this thing. I would say that the stabilization on this is at least as good, if not much better, than the A6500. Really fantastic. Autofocus, it's better than the GH4 and G7. Still not absolutely fantastic, but the low light capabilities are much better than the GH4 or the G7. Flip out screen just really works well. So it's a great camera. The Newell Dual IS2 is fantastic. I love the kit lens on this thing. So that is a camera I really have been digging shooting with, and you'll see a lot of in 2017. The next camera is the GH4. Actually, I'm shooting on the GH4 right now. That's what you're watching. And man, these are just tanks. I've had two of them since they came out. I bought them the same month they came out. And they have been the most trusted camera, next to another one we'll look at here in a second, for me since I've been shooting video in general. They are insanely tough. They feel great. They have a headphone jack, which is really nice. Flip out screen, really, really great cameras. The only thing is I didn't like where autofocus was horrible. So if you want to use autofocus for video, these are not good cameras. The other thing I didn't like is the headphone jack placement, which looks like it's not changing on the GH5. Other things I don't care for as much is low light capabilities are pretty poor, especially compared to the newer G7 and the G85. But if you're looking for a really solid workhorse, these are getting very affordable, especially used. And I can't recommend them enough. And in a YouTube space where you're you know, probably lighting your videos, the low light isn't really that much of a deal breaker to me. That said, I'll probably be selling one of these to help pay for a GH5 so I can cover that camera. But otherwise, if I was just shooting YouTube videos, I wouldn't probably upgrade because this thing is awesome and I really do love this camera. Next up, we have the A6500. Right now I have it in this awesome small rig cage, which I'll have a link to in the description with all the other cameras. Man, these guys are stepping up their game when it comes to cages and gear, but it feels amazing in the hands, even with the cage. I did own a A6300, and the only reason I sold that is so I could afford this camera, because I can't just buy cameras willy-nilly. I have to, it has to make sense financially. So I sold it to a friend of mine. I'm working on a review on this and a guide as well. So far, I'm very impressed. Touchscreen isn't much to write home about. It only really works for autofocus, and even then it is pretty poor. It's nothing like what Panasonic has going on. But the larger sensor, the autofocus is awesome, just like the A6500. Much nicer grip. They changed the shutter release, a couple other things that I really like. And low light is ridiculous, and the stabilization is very good. I wouldn't say it's quite as good as the G85. Part of that is the rolling shutter is still terrible on this camera. So even with the stabilization, if you're vlogging or something, it's, you know, going to be really, really jittery. And of course, no flip out screen. We're still dealing with this stupid flip up thing. So as much as I'd love to recommend this for vlogging, you really need some extra gear to make it work. And even then, there's some weird HDMI stuff in 4K. But if you shoot and you're behind the camera like this, or you use an HDMI monitor, this is a massive winner. Or if you really want low light and autofocus, you can't beat this camera right now. And of course, all that for under $1,000, which is pretty impressive. So that brings us to our next camera, and that is the trusted beast of a camera, the C100 Mark I. This camera shot pretty much every single video in 2016. If you saw my face and it was, you know, in the studio here, it was shot on this camera, and it was at the other end of the studio. This is obviously much larger than the other cameras, but the cost is really dropping. So I think new it's $2,500, and you can pick it up for even less used. I bought this used for, I think, $3,000 a couple years ago, or $3,200, $3,500. And the only reason I would recommend this for a YouTuber is if you want one camera that you don't want to use any accessories on, this is your best shot. It has built-in ND, so you will never have to thread any kind of filters on the front of it to deal with shooting outdoors. The audio is all built into the handle. The battery will last you for days. It has a little level indicator on it. It's just a fantastic camera, really good at low light. And for those that are saying, well, it's not, you know, 4K, it does have a 4K sensor, and it's downscaling that 4K to 1080 in camera. So if you're like me and you downscale to publish your 4K videos in 1080 on YouTube, this camera will kind of help you out with that, actually. So I really do enjoy this camera. Unfortunately, I might have to sell it again to keep up with some of the new lenses that are coming out. And again, I can't just hang on to every camera I've ever bought. So this might be going up for sale, but I'm not sure yet because I just love this camera. This and the GH4 have been so good to me over the years. Awesome, awesome camera. Again, if you want just to buy a camera, put a lens on it, and put an SD card in it and nothing else, this is the camera for you. So that is a list of the cameras that I use for YouTube. They all have different jobs. I'll quickly go over that since some of you will be interested. The C100 and my GH4s are used for static stuff usually. I can check and monitor audio, and they're really, really troopers. They have great battery life, so I don't have to worry about that. My G7 is for B-roll. It has a dedicated place that I've done a video on over at the bench. So if you see any bench videos, it's shot on the G7. The G85 is becoming kind of a mobile vlogging camera. It's bouncing around the studio. I use that quite a bit. And the same goes for the A6500. It's a great camera. You pretty much never have to touch the lens. Just let the autofocus do its thing. And it's a really, really trusty camera for that capability. It's also kind of my best low light camera if I ever need to do stuff with that. So hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully that answers a couple questions. I'd love to hear what cameras you're using and enjoying. So thank you so much for watching. I'll have everything I've talked about linked to in the description. Appreciate you guys hanging out, and I will see you in the next video.